So now that the relationship has ended, paternity has been determined, and custody has been established, the hard work of co-parenting begins. If you're ready to stop the drama and work through the trauma, it's time for Co-Parent Court with your host, Judge Rochelle Jackson. Welcome. Welcome to Co-Parent Court, and thank you for joining us today. I am your host, Judge Rochelle Jackson, and tonight we have for you a special guest, and he is, we're going to call him Dad, and we're going to allow Dad to introduce himself and to share with us his current status for how he co-parents with his ex-spouse. So at this time, Dad, welcome to the show. And if you would just share briefly with the audience what your current situation is in terms of co-parenting and how you got there.
Sure. Going by Dad. Well, first off, I'm going by Dad just out of respect toward my family or family unit. And that's one of the ways in which I co-parent. Even though I have strong differences with my co-parenting partner, I choose to co-parent mainly because my biological father was not in my life. And I realized the challenges that gave me in my life. And so I also realized the value that I'm providing my children. So how did one get to co-parent? I was with my children's mother since 2008, really. So from 2008 until 2019 officially. So 11 years. Effectively, the two of us grew up together. We shared, amazing times that allow for us to get married. But just being honest, we had very immature ways of dealing with one another that ultimately led to us getting a divorce. So I am not local to this metropolitan area. I'm from a different metropolitan area, and I have zero family here. So for me, co-parenting is a lot of just will over skill. I refuse to leave my children's lives in the capacity that I'm in. I deal with a lot of emotional headwinds. I don't want to say directly from my co-parent, but just there's a lot of emotion that are still there. And I navigated really through not talking to her and therapy, just being honest. The challenges that come up between us do originate in communication, but for me, co-parenting is about the children and picking my battles. So a lot of things that come up between us can be, found that have its roots in our marriage that didn't work out.
You touched a lot of points that I would like to dive deeper in to get your perspective and also to get a man's perspective. I think I've mentioned to you when we were talking and trying to line up this this recording session that I believe, and I created this show for co-parents because I believe it's extremely important for men to be involved in their children's lives. It makes a big difference in terms of having healthy, mentally stable, emotionally grounded adults. And it stems from how we as adults engage with our children and what traumas we expose to them. So you talked about not having your father in your life. And I also dabble in my professional life in terms of being an attorney. I do domestic violence work, and I find so often that a lot of the victims and survivors of domestic violence, and also a lot of the perpetrators and abusers, come from a lack of wording would be broken homes. And when I mean broken homes, I mean homes where the father is not engaged in the children's lives. But you have seen and you've determined that you are going to stay involved, regardless of whether or not you're doing it as a person in a new location who doesn't have the support of an extended family. So,
Um, for,
how,
for me, it wasn't a choice.
okay.
Um, well, I mean, like, put it like this: I knew what type of father I was going to be at 5 years old, just because mine wasn't there. So for me, like, I don't know if that was a blessing. I don't know if that was, whatever. But I knew the type of father that I was going to be based upon that. Not saying that it didn't hurt. Not saying that I didn't have strong male role models, but I didn't have my father. I didn't have a basis in terms of who I was as a man until, to keep it real with you, until I had kids. My kids grounded, like my son grounded me. Like my son gave me a North Star. Like my son gave me a different piece of my identity. And my daughter only leveled that up. So when my marriage disintegrated, and we went through a period of separation in which my co-parent was dealing with her side of the divorce emotionally, that I had to be a little bit more present than the average man would be. But I embraced that. But more so, like, that's the kind of person I am overall. Like, I run towards adversity or run towards the burning building more so than running away from it. But um, yeah, I'm sorry.
So, how long have you been co parenting? How long have you all been divorced?
Officially 4 years. We were separated 4 years before that. So we've been in this space of doing our own thing with the kids for 5 years.
Okay. So, and over those 5 years, you've figured out how to navigate through it because you put the children first.
Definitely.
Is it? Yeah.
It's and
So,
you know what?
go ahead.
Like I can't really give a lot of credit to myself or a lot of credit to my co-parent. Um, shoot, I say this like our both of our parents um parented out of a co-parenting space. So this is kind of what both of us have seen for real. Like we
Okay.
don't know successful, healthy relationships when it comes to this. We've only seen family units.
So,
So they gave us a lot of tips.
you've seen family units that weren't together and they were co parenting children, and you all were those children.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're the children. Both of us, myself and my co-parent, have siblings. So just seeing, her family unit and the siblings interacting, me seeing my family unit and the siblings reacting, that's one thing I can say is that in terms of a post divorce relationship, it's always been about the kids, no matter who is taking the lead on a certain issue. So that is really honestly the only good thing that's come from
And you also touched on, you said that it involves boundaries. So what do you mean about
it.
boundaries, and how are boundaries defined and set in this co-parenting relationship that y'all have?
It's been a journey. Because again, like the two of us grew up together emotionally. So a lot of the processes that we had in our marriage as it disintegrated, we didn't leave those alone. So the further that we got from each other, hell, the both of us had to put boundaries in. And really, like, for me, I can say it just developed over time in terms of me maturing, me going to therapy, me realizing what it is that I want for my life, me realizing, you know, me realizing the value that I bring to my children as their father. So in terms of my children, like my children need a healthy father. Part of being a healthy father is having boundaries, and that don't matter who it is. So, how did my boundaries get in place with my co-parent? It's a sliding scale. Some things I'm not as good at stating, and some things I think I do. I think I have too many boundaries, but um, for me over time, like just keeping it real, it came with writing them down, like what I was cool with, what I wasn't cool with. Mainly put my children first. Um, Let me slow down. If it's in my power to do for my children, I'm going to do it. Number two, if I have to put my oxygen mask on first in order to do that, that's what my boundary is. There was a space and time in which, I had to carve out boundaries for my living space. From then, I had to carve out boundaries on when it was cool to contact me about kid stuff. Then it came to a point where I had to carve out boundaries for how my time was going to be distributed for my children. So creating a schedule and sticking to that mug. Like, this is what I'm
So,
going to do. This is what I'm not going to do.
so when you say boundaries, are you talking about the rules of engagement and operation and how y'all deal with each other?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
I
So
mean,
you,
all in purpose. When and how to contact me. Shoot, when and how to talk to me.
oh,
Overall, really everything. Just in terms of tearing down what we were and building up what we are and are going to be in the future. Those are my boundaries are entitlement or encasing.
so, I spoke with your ex-wife, and I wanted to complete this recording before I released hers. But you brought up a point that she brought up. So let me bring it up to you and let me get your position on it. You talked about communication, and that was an area that you all, and you can correct me if I'm putting words in your mouth, that you all may be struggling with in this moment. So,
Mhm.
what's the challenges as of today with communication between you all and and your ex-wife in terms of the children? Like, how does that look, and what are your boundaries that um you can share with us? Let me hear what some boundaries are with communications that may be problematic.
I'm trying to take this time to decide how much of our business I want to put out here. 'Cause I still want to remain have some kind of decorum. However, um, when I deal with my co-parent, it is very important for me to carve out things in extremely black and white terms that don't jar any of mine or any of her emotions. So a lot of time when my co-parent communicates to me, like when we have a disagreement about things, whether it's, I mean, it can only be logistical, right? In terms of when things are gonna get done, how things are gonna get done, and who's gonna do them. So when I communicate with her, number one, I'm making sure that I'm only talking about that, because they can turn into an emotionally charged discussion in an instant. And just being frank with you, I don't have time for that anymore. So that's kind of the challenge right there, is just staying away from emotionally challenged conversations. Also, I have a tendency of playing Superman. So in terms of meaning, like, I will disintegrate my own boundaries to make a difference. A lot of times, by not communicating to my co-parent my boundaries, that sometimes I can feel as if I'm getting taken advantage of. So when I communicate with her, sometimes I'll be having to check myself. That turns into me not communicating with her because I'm trying to keep myself safe. So, you know,
So, so
go
can I
ahead.
respond to that? And so
I
if I
mean,
hear what you're saying, that you create boundaries because of whatever situation that's happening, and those boundaries may not necessarily be communicated to her because you
mhm,
realize you need to put some safeguards in place for whatever situation came up. And then her response to
mhm.
those are things that she didn't even realize were boundaries that you created and yet didn't communicate to her, right? Is that what you said?
I mean, yeah, no. Yeah, like I feel like sometimes, or put it like this, I feel like sometimes I don't really communicate my boundaries to her, mainly because it's not her business what my boundaries
Okay.
but I say that in terms of knowing that there's been situations in the past where this individual has taken advantage of my boundaries, and not one time, more than one time. So for me, yeah, not communicating with her is a protection mechanism, 100%. Um, and just to be honest with you, where I'm at in my life with that creating inefficiencies in our communications, I'm cool with that. Um, just being honest, because I know that I can keep myself safe, but also I know that when it's my time to be present for my children, whether it's my custody time or not, I know that I not have the bandwidth to be fully present.
What's your
So
schedule?
does
What's
this
how do
roll
y'all
up?
share how do y'all share the time with of the children?
Monday, Tuesday, Monday and Tuesday are exclusively her days. Wednesday and Thursday are exclusively mine, and we divide weekends. So first and third weekends are normally hers. Second and third weekends are normally mine. We alternate the fifth weekend, and so that is kind of how the weekends might go from first and third for her for a period of time, and then switch until first and third being mine, just because of that fifth weekend kicker. And so
Okay.
that's actually one of the parts that was contentious for us, and part of one of the reasons why, you know, I kind of drew back from communicating with her the way that I used to, because I used to operate from a standpoint of together or not, we still one team. There's going to be some places where I might be able to take the lead at some points. There might be some places where you need to take the lead in some points, but we still are, operating for the best of these kids. And there was a time in which I told this person, like I had a job that required me to be put like I had a job that required me to do X. And for that period of time for my job, she was just really combative to me about the job. Also, when we first got divorced, I had put in our agreement that I would take the kids for the fifth weekend. And so there was a period of time in which it was really beating down on me. Like I would take the kids to school, I would pick the kids up from school every day. Every day. Have them exclusively during my time, bleed over into her time, and then have that fifth weekend. So I went to her like, hey, look, I have the kids a lot. I don't mind having the kids a lot. This is not what I'm saying. I'm saying I need more buy-in from you. And it was a really contentious conversation, and it was made personal to me. So that taught me that, hey, man, when you talk to this person, you can't deal with this person in terms of emotion. So, like, if you are going to make a change or want to make a change in something, you have to either find other avenues or, like, you just have to be creative in how you do it. I mean, thank God, after a year and a half of like, reminding her, it became cool to her and for her. But I want to really put something out here and say this. Like, this took time for me to get here. Number one, to get that for myself. Now,
Right.
everybody know you need rest as a co-parent. Everybody know that so
You, you need rest as
right, I
a
don't know.
parent. And you do.
Rest.
So you talked about, and I like to explain it or share that we have these lanes that we go by. So the first lane and where y'all started from was this intimate emotional lane. But eventually, after the breakup and a divorce, you end up because you can't operate under that lane anymore because it's based on your emotions. So you have to go over and operate under this co-parenting lane. And sometimes it's hard to get there. Y'all got there. You still struggle and you still have challenges, and parenting is challenging in itself. It doesn't matter if you're together or separated. Even when you were in the house together, you probably still had issues with who's doing what and when you're doing it and who's picking up the child and the children. So, but once you have two separate households, it's magnified. But you all created your own plan. Nobody gave it to you. You decided to do and try these things, and you've been doing it together for 5 years. So the challenge, as I hear it and as I heard it, is how do you communicate when perhaps things need to be modified, or that uh, you know, in the moment, if you have a job and I got to go to this workshop or I have to go to this training and I can't have the children for my 2 days, you would want the other person to be responsive to those changes. So the question becomes, how do you communicate that in a way that it's received so that it's give and take? You may want to go to a concert out of town sometime and it's your week. So, how do
I
you,
don't. I don't. I don't switch.
you don't
Don't switch.
switch?
That no. I don't switch. I mean, I don't switch because that isn't a luxury that I have.
In this moment?
Doesn't I mean I love the power of yet, but I'm
Okay.
speaking in terms of my reality right now.
Yeah.
Nah, like to like put it like this. If there in the last 5 years, the last two and a half, I've had roles that require me to travel. In the last 5 years, since we've been divorced, I've had a financial obligation to our family, whether it's been paying tuition, whether it's been, joint things financially that her and I didn't take care of while we were married that we're taking care of now. So I've been looking at it like if it's something that I need to do for work that still benefits the both of us, I need to do it. That has always been a contentious place in our relationship. Always. So when it comes for me to be time for time to switch, I don't even bring it to her no more. I only let her know in terms of me being like I'm not going to be present. And that's one of the things that's really challenging for me because um I am consistent. I am dependable. I am responsible. Whenever my co-parent asks me for money, she has it without asking twice. Whenever my co-parent needs me to do something for our children, she does not have to ask twice. Sometimes I might even feel crazy for her asking one time. Number one, I'm not a person that likes conflict. So in order for when the shoe's on the other foot, when I need something, not being able to come to that person as a parenting partner is very contentious to me. Like that part where I feel like, that's where I feel like I overgive because the luxury is not given to me.
It's
But
not
that's put me in a
reciprocated.
space for me to realize nothing's reciprocated.
Okay.
So that puts me in a situation or a standpoint where, you know, when I have things that I need to do for myself, I need to make sure that I can do them for myself because it's gonna be met with a problem.
So would you say that,
So
well, not we already know, but the communication is what the issue is, or the impasse becomes because you choose not to communicate certain things because of you believe that you're going to get certain resistance, and you believe that because you've gotten it uh in the past
for years.
for years.
Yeah, I feel as if trying the same thing and expecting different results is the definition of insanity. Would I like for things to be better between us? Yeah. Have I came at her as an adult behind some real things that I need assistance with as a co-parent? Of course. Do I do I continue to be met with emotional headwinds? You're absolutely right. So a person in my situation, like I I don't have any family here. The family that I do have is her family. So all the time, I have to walk through a mental minefield in order to make sure that things get taken care of. So what I end up doing a lot of time is just shouldering the load, unless I have to go out of town for work. And what that does, and that allows for things to happen, is it allows for me to keep the peace. It allows for my children to continually be safe. And you brought up a point earlier in which that you said, like we parent our children away from our traumas. And so, like, this is something that I see that could potentially be a thing that could affect my children more because it's affecting them now. That, like, I choose to, like, follow my sword for my children. You understand? Like, it might hurt me for a couple of days, it might hurt them for a decade.
Because
So,
children see
um, they see everything.
everything.
So, um, that's just really like uh, this life for me is a sacrifice. It don't really. So I appreciate being able to talk through some issues that I have, but like mm, this is for my kids. If I have to go through something hard with a co-parent, that's what it is. Also, like I've been talked to and given a lot of wisdom by a lot of older people that say that with time it does get better. So I'm
It
just waiting
it
for that
it it
time.
does. It does. But I've been listening to both of you. It seems, and when you're in it, it seems probably more you don't get to see the progress that as you all explain it. And like I said, I heard her and I heard you. Let me ask you this question. When you're communicating to her, how is that communication? And whether or not you're asking a question so that you can get a response to that question, or whether or not you're just griping with that communication.
Rarely gripe, if griping at all.
You said
But
rarely.
I mean, put it like this: I don't feel as if I gripe at all. However, that could be left up to her interpretation or anybody's interpretation.
Well,
When I do communicate with her, I try to keep it as dry as possible.
so you're
Like if it's a
asking a
text message, we
question
both
that
got eye
require because
both of us.
communication is about the
Like if
children,
she
right?
the lion's share of it.
Right. Well,
I would
well,
say
that's
out of 100% pop, the children are probably 80 to 85% of it. Yes.
all right. So I'm going to disregard the other 15%, but looking at the 85, because I don't know what the 15% is, and that 15% could be what the issue is. But if you're trying to co parent and to effectively communicate, I like to suggest that you just ask the questions. Eventually, you all may get to the point where you could raise concerns and she could raise concerns, and it doesn't matter, because you're just going to read what the question is and you're going to respond to the question. But if you're not asking a question, what's the reason for the communication? And when it comes to sharing information, because you have to share school information, you may have to share medical information because you may bring the child or the children to the hospital. She may bring, to an appointment. And that information is just shared information. It shouldn't invoke emotional response. So I'm not quite sure what's invoking the emotional responses that you're getting that you would have to set boundaries to, and whether or not when you've communicated, whether or not those were communications that were necessary or whether or not they were just venting, because venting is going to get you nothing but continued chaos. But if you frame it that it's a question that you want a response to, then maybe some of the emotions can be removed.
Well, that's one thing that I can say that I've seen growth in from both of us.
Okay.
I don't think neither one of us. I don't think neither one of us want to have it be so contentious. So I've definitely realized for the lion's share when she attempts to communicate with me, it's just a straight question. And so for me in response, we both have iPhones. I'll just respond to I'll just thumbs the message up or thumbs it down. Like a lot of this stuff isn't not even a reason for a conversation or a back and forth. So that's one area of growth that I have seen up from us, and I do appreciate it because I feel like both of us have high anxiety about what this situation is. Um, and just to keep it real with you, like I've been wanting to have like that adult and grown up conversation. I just don't get that. So I'm not really I'm not putting myself out there in terms of that. I've tried to have that conversation 5, 6, 7, 8 times. It doesn't really do anything for me. It doesn't really, that seed doesn't produce the fruit that I want it to. So I don't go down that path. I stay in my lane. I maximize my time and my effort with my children, and I leave it at that.
Yep. I meant it seems that you all are working down the right path when it comes to your children. Now, how are you going to deal with that other 15%? And when you all are going to have that conversation that's needed, it may, it's going to take longer than the 5 years. But what, because you're at that point now. But you also indicated, and I don't know if you want to dive into this, you indicated that you were perhaps in counseling to help you navigate some of this. Is that
Yeah,
something you would recommend to this audience about pushing through?
definitely, definitely. Especially, I mean, look, I'm a man. I don't know what it's like to be a woman. For a man, in terms of navigating your divorce, finding out, what your emotional responses are to your own trauma, how that's affected you, your childhood, how's it, how you communicate, how you show up generally, in order to trudge through that to get to a future to where you could think your way through so you can be present for yourself and your children and know what you're providing for your children and how mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. You got to go to therapy because you don't even know. Once you trudge through your own personal childhood traumas, you're able to properly identify what you could be passing down to your own children. You can't protect your kids from all of it because you'll protect your children from 100% of your trauma and they'll get hit with 100% of their own. But it does help you show up for them in a more emotionally mature way. So, do I recommend therapy and counseling for everybody? Yes. Do I recommend it twice for men, especially black men? Of course.
That the trauma that we don't recognize, as a people, that we don't get treated. We're just passing it from generation to generation. So this is an opportunity to at least say, hey, stop, take a look at, talk to some professionals about, issues that will impact your children. And you seem to be navigating that quite well, at least in my opinion. And I'm just an observer from the outside. I would love for one day for you and your ex-wife to come on. That maybe y'all want to appear, and you've reached the point that you want to take down or turn on the camera, or just appear together and to discuss how things are going and whether or not communication is improving. And I'm not quite sure of your boundaries that you set and whether or not those need to be shared, with her, or if you're just going to navigate through those because it doesn't affect the relationship as co-parents. Um, and one day when you all are able to truly communicate that there are no boundaries, or we respect each other's boundaries, or you respect each other's boundaries, that you all are able to 100%, co-parent and get rid of whatever that 15% is that's still a hindrance in this moment. What do you think about that?
No, I'm not open to that.
Not not yet.
I'm not open. I mean, I mean, that door is really closed to me, and that door
Okay.
is really closed to me because that door is closed to me just because I don't feel as if coming into a public space to talk about our issues and we can talk about them in private is really conducive to the best thing for our family overall.
But you're going to
Um,
talk in private. I mean, you're going to get to the point where you can talk in private. You're not there yet, correct?
we hope. We hope.
But you would like to get there, at least to have the conversation with her eventually.
If it happens, it happens.
Yeah,
If
right.
it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, I'm my peace with it.
Okay. So you're good with where things are in this moment for co-parenting. There are no current conflicts or issues that you need to work through.
Um, like Judge, a lot of this stuff, like I internalize so much so that when someone asks like what can be done about it, like I'm like really kind of taken aback because a lot of this stuff I just do and don't really give an emotional thought to. I say this. This is the only thing. So when we were getting divorced, we didn't go to court. And so I wrote up a divorce agreement for the two of us and presented it to a judge. The judge signed off on it. Now the two of us did discuss what those terms were, and that was pretty cool, right? But just being individuals who aren't legal professionals and doing this on our own, we didn't file anything for custody. So, she is in a position to where her life could potentially change. I have not been put in that situation where my life could potentially change. And so, there is no legal ground rule basis for any of the way that we deal with each other. And from there, that starts all of the issues with us. Because, there's nothing that the state of Louisiana says that has to be done for the both of us. So I brought up a time period in which, our schedule was contentious. I had to fight her for the schedule for all intents and purposes. I had to continue speaking up for myself until she initially backed down. But that took a year and a half, 2 years. There was a situation in a space where, we had discussed who was going to pay tuition when the individual made a decision to move our child from schools without consulting me. So, like, in terms of boundaries, in terms of keeping things on the up and up, that is one thing that I wish I would have done. Um, Honestly, the only thing that keeps me from doing it is the fact that it brings me a lot of anxiety. It costs money. And that, the perception of doing this makes me look like a jerk. However, in terms of putting these boundaries out there, I feel like they protect us from one another right now. But also just gives each other peace of mind in terms of knowing what's going to be done, and it mediates a lot of that. So, my question is how do you feel about the path that we've taken? And two, what can I do in the near future to remedy this situation so it doesn't become contentious?
So you all have chosen to enter to an agreement, and I don't know, and I don't believe your agreement is in writing, because when you got your divorce that the court has to give to you, they only consider the divorce, and you did not put any of your boundaries or stipulation in writing that the court accepted for custody. Is that correct?
Um, I'll put it to you like this: we put in a custody schedule, and I put in a term limit of when it was supposed to be, and that ended in 2021. The court accepted everything. In fact, when I went to go file it, the judge came from her chambers and asked me to my face if I wanted to sign this or if this is what I wanted to do, because it was so unorthodox that she wanted to look me in the face. So, again, at that time, not knowing what end is up and being overcome with emotion, yeah, I did it. But, here it is 3, 4, and 5 years later when things are contentious. I don't have anything to fall back on that would, quell situations or bring about peace. Like everything's a struggle, everything's a conversation that doesn't need to be.
So you could, without, so a judge, and when you go to court and you litigate, and you're either going to agree on whatever the terms are, and you have to go back and forth like you're doing now. It won't take a year because nobody has a year for you all to decide how you're going to pick up, how you're going to drop off. So we have frameworks, and that framework would have been shared with you all, and some issues that typically parents run into that you may not have thought about in the moment. Those things the attorneys could have shared with you, not the judge. So whatever you agreed to, as long as it's legal, the judge accepted that. And I hear you saying those terms they worked well, perhaps when the children were little, or they weren't in the schools
Hmm.
that they were in now, or you didn't realize that you needed to include something about schooling and decision making. And now every time some new issue comes up, and new issues are going to come up because your children are getting older, and every time they grow, new things arise. So it's going to continue that you're going to run into perhaps conflicts with each other, or issues that you didn't put in the original signing of the original agreement. One thing that you may want to consider and ask your ex-wife about is perhaps participating in mediation, that you all could go and you can mediate um, the issues now, and you can have a mediator to help navigate that, who may be able to also offer some things for you to consider, because they do custody mediation and they realize this problem's going to come up, that problem's going to come up, and let's talk about it now, so that you can get another written document that you all both agree to, that you do it outside of the court. So that's one avenue that you can explore, that doesn't get you into a courtroom where the judge may have to make the decision for you, because the best solution is that the parties make the decision, and that they offer the compromise and the give and take, because you don't want anybody telling you when you got to pick up your children, and when you got to drop them off, and when you have to visit with them, or to have custody of them. So if you could navigate that yourself, perhaps with a mediator, that's something you may want to consider. Now, mediation costs money also, because nobody does free mediation. Going to the court system costs money also. But at least with the mediation, you're able to have a neutral party there who's able to navigate the conversation. So that's something you can
Thank you.
consider.
Cool. Thank you.
All right. You got any other ask? We got a few more minutes. Let's see. We said about 30. I don't know how long we've been on. We've been on 42 minutes. Okay. Time flies when you're having
Hmm.
such a good conversation. You have any other asks that you would like my quick recommendation on?
I mean, like this conversation is dope. I appreciate it. No, I'm just talking about this in this light, in this frame for me is more difficult than I imagined, because just understanding and hearing some of the avenues that I have at my disposal that I haven't taken or haven't done yet, just it's just wild to hear sometimes. You know what I mean? So, um, yeah, man. My thing is, number one is that my children are raised to be amazing members of society. That they're, number one, physically healthy and here to do it, but also like mentally and emotionally safe. And whatever it takes for me in order to have them do that, regardless if the situation is healthy or not, is what I'm going to do. But just hearing that it could be easier makes me feel away. So, in terms of questions to ask you, I don't really have questions outside of how can I protect myself for real. Yeah, every time I have hope for it, getting better, every time I try to present myself in a space for things to get better. Because I mean, like there was a time and period in which We weren't even having joint birthday parties together. And the time that I saw it happen for my son, who's we has memories of us together and not, it shook me in such a way that I was like, it's not nothing that I'm ever going to do again for him. So like, knowing that this situation is affecting them, make me want to do a little better. But in terms of just any more of the emotional lift from me right now, nah, I don't. Dad don't got it.
Right. So you got to stay out of that emotional lane, and you have to figure out for yourself what those triggers are, and you can go back and do some reflection about what you communicated to her to get a response that you did not want to get, so that that won't be the communication style again, just so that you won't have to relive that. And I hear you saying you're going to stay out of it, but you have to make sure you identify what got you there the first time so that you won't repeat those same patterns.
Awesome.
So I would suggest that. So try that. I hope I shared some information with you that makes your path a little better. And, parenting is
Mhm.
hard. Co-parenting it's really, really hard. And if you want to do it as best you can. And because it's new, you never did it before. There's no roadmap. Everybody's different. You bring all your traumas. She bring all her traumas, and it's challenging. And every situation is different. But it appears that you all both have taken the position that you all are going to co-parent, and you're going to make sure that you're present for your children. So that is a great place to be.
Thank you.
It is. So I hope some of my other audience members can take something from this conversation and realize that it can be done. And you all are doing it. And it's not easy, but you continue to get up every day and you do it and you figure it out. And know that there are professionals who can help you navigate it, that you don't have to necessarily go and litigate everything and get these outrageous attorney bills and spend time in court for somebody else to tell you what you need to do.
Yeah, just parting shots. I'm just speaking to the men that listen to this show. You, regardless of your co-parenting relationship, it's your children that need you. Yes, co-parenting, in my opinion, is kind of, I won't say the worst thing you can do, but it's the hardest thing to do, because you have to turn your head from everything that may have went wrong for you and still show up for somebody that needs you, that didn't ask to be here. So for men, number one, understanding it's your duty, and understanding number two, that this duty is out of love to your children, and be who you needed when you be who you needed for them, what you needed, and then go from there.
That's great advice, sir. And with that, we will end. And my hope is that parents choose to co and not do it solo. And until next time, we thank you for joining us and look forward to more conversations on Co-Parent Court. Have a great day.
Take it easy.